Hello, welcome guys back to another study of the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith. We're going to continue on into chapter 2, paragraph 2. Once again, chapter 2 is going to be on the topic of God and the Holy Trinity. Today, our focus will be on the relations of God and His creature in particular. Now, before we start officially dwelling deeper into the details of the confession of this paragraph itself, let us read through the whole paragraph for once through first and get a rough idea of what it's talking about. So, the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith, chapter 2, paragraph 2. God, having all life, glory, goodness, blessedness in and of himself, is alone in and unto himself all sufficient, not standing in need of any creature which he hath made, nor deriving any glory from them, but only manifesting his own glory in, by, unto, and upon them. He is the only foundation of all being, of whom, through whom, and to whom are all things. And he have most sovereign dominion over all creatures, to do by them, for them, or upon them whatsoever himself pleases. In his sight all things are open and manifest. His knowledge is infinite, infallible, and independent upon the creature, so as nothing is to him contingent or uncertain. He is most holy in all his counsel, in all his works, and in all his commands. To him is due from angels and men whatsoever worship, service, or obedience as creatures they owe unto the Creator, and whatever he is further pleased to require of them. So we're going to dwell into the first part in detail of this paragraph itself, which is God, having all life, glory, goodness, blessedness in and of himself, is alone in and unto himself all sufficient, not standing in need of any creature which he hath made, nor deriving any glory from them, but only manifesting his own glory in, by, unto, and upon them. So we're going to start off with this aspect of the self-sufficient God, that God himself is independent from creatures, from the created things. He himself is self-sufficient. God does not require his creatures for life. To put it in a very simple context of ourselves, we require other created beings for life. We need animals for meat. We need plants for vegetables. In the same way, the animals themselves needs plants to survive. And ultimately, we have our own science. We have our science to teach us that plants need photosynthesis to grow. At the end of the day, they require another created things, which is the sun itself. We are interdependent of one another as created beings, as created things for life itself to exist. But God is not the same as us. God himself is self-sustaining. God does not derive life from other things. Next, God does not need a relationship with his creation itself. He does not need it to be God himself. He is in and of himself a relational God already as the triune Godhead, which we will dwell deeper in the further studies. But he does not need that relationship with us to be God himself. Next point, God does not need us to give him glory. It is not as though God created this world to add upon glory to himself, but he is glorious already. He does not need the created beings to give him more glory, as though we are capable of adding upon glory to him. And ultimately, God is in and of himself blessed, or it can also be translated as happy. He does not depend on men to entertain him, to give him joy, as how some of the pagans would see it, that through the fighting of different people, it brings joys to the gods. But that is not God himself. He does not find joy in our fighting. He does not find joy in the things that we do for him, or even do to give happiness to him in some sort. He does not need it from us, because he is in and of himself blessed. In fact, in Job 22 is actually mentioned here, can a man be profitable to God? Surely he who is wise is profitable to himself. Is it any pleasure to the Almighty if you are in the right? Or is it gain to him if you make your way blameless? Often of times we like to put God down into a very emotional creature where certain things that we do surprises him, certain things that we do really sadden him, like how it will sadden another human being, that to a point that God himself does not know how to react, or God himself does not know what to do further on. But this is not God. He is independent from the created beings. He is self-sufficient. Men often think that we are able to add glory upon God. But in the confession itself, it emphasized that he does not derive glory from us. But his glory is manifested through us, the created beings. Just as how is mentioned in Isaiah when he stand before the throne of God. Above him stood seraphim, each had wings, 6 wings, with 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. Nothing that we do in this world will add upon God's glory, because in the very first place, in our creation itself, it already manifested God's glory in us. We are a manifestation of God's glory. We are created in the image of God. We don't add upon to that glory. But of course, at the end of the day, as human beings, oftentimes we don't acknowledge this glory which is in us, this glory in which God has manifested through us. But of course, we also recognize that this is corrupted within the sins that we have committed. But nonetheless, the point is that we are incapable of adding glory to God, because God himself is a glorious God in him and of himself. Next, we will move on to the next part of paragraph 2. It says here, he is the alone fountain of all being, of whom, through whom, and to whom are all things. And he hath most sovereign dominion over all creatures, to do by them, for them, or upon them, whatsoever himself pleases. This aspect of sovereign dominion that God has upon all men is something that we as Christians ought to recognize. Christians are not deists, in that God is transcendent but not immanent. We don't believe that God created the world and left it on his own free will and decision to make its own choices. God is sovereign over us. It's not as though God wasn't sovereign before the time of Christ, and when Christ came, God was sovereign after that. Neither is it to say that God was sovereign to the point of Christ and human took over and decided to nail him on the cross, and God is no longer in control of this world and we are left to our own demise. No, what it is saying is that throughout eternity, since creation, God is a sovereign and he has dominion over us as created beings. Each and every single one of us, every single thing in this world, God is in control. God being sovereign will also mean that we as creatures do not affect the decision that he has made. We can't surprise God, as mentioned before. We can't change the plans that he has for us. In fact, later on we will see that God does not have any contingent plan. There is only one plan. There is only one will. There is only one thing that God has created in us for us to do. Not as though today I reject God, it is a surprise to God. Not as if today when I come before Christ and believe in him, it's a surprise to God. God is in control of it already. The next point that I want to talk about is the fountain of all things. He is the absolute source of all things for his dominions. God does not need our counsel. God does not take counsel from us. We don't give hints to God and tell God what to do. He is in and of himself certain. He is in and of himself infinite. He is in and of himself the decision maker according to his own will. In fact, I would like to quote from Romans chapter 11 verses 34 to 36. For who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor, or who has given a gift to him that he might be repaid? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen. We are under this dominion, but we often do not wish to be under the dominion of God. Man in general has this fear of being under dominion of one another. The simple reason for that I can give is that there are many tyrants in the world. Oftentimes we don't like to be ruled by other people because we are ruled by sinners. As sinners, we don't rule perfectly. We don't have the wisdom of the universe to rule in a manner which is pleasing to everyone. But yet God in his infinity is able to. So this is a difference that we ought to recognize. Once again, that often of times we like to attribute the things that we see in this world and apply it to God. But at the end of the day, God is not a man. When he makes decision, he does not do it in a way that harms people, because ultimately he wants to manifest his glory in us. Everything that he does is for his own glory. When oftentimes when we say that, also we might think that this is a very selfish motive. But yet when we were to think about it from another perspective, who else can God give glory to beside himself? Who else is greater than the Creator himself? Now, think about it also from another perspective as created beings. I'm not sure how many of you out there have your own hobbies to do, modeling or whatnot, to be creative. For example, an artist creating an artwork itself. Will we not treasure the things that we made with our own hands? Will we not will the things not be dear to us? For we have made it. We will treasure it. The amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of hard work that we placed in making and creating something. Inherently, as human beings, we have this understanding that all these things should be treasured. So, we rule over these created things also. It doesn't need to be alive per se, but we rule over it. Then what more is God's rule over us not the same? Will he not love us more than we love our own created things, our own models, our own art pieces, our own handicraft? Will God not love us even more in comparison? So, to have dominion over us, to be sovereign over us, does not necessarily mean that God is a tyrant, as how some men can be corrupted to a point to be. But yet God is loving towards us as his people in particular. So it's something for us to reflect upon as we go ahead in our daily lives, as we continue to admire the sovereignty of God. I still remember once, quite recently, a friend asked me, what is one attribute of God that is very important to me, or that is, to me, that is the most significant attribute about God? And I answered, straight up off my mind, the first thing that I can think about is the sovereignty of God. To know that our life is in control of a loving Father for us, that is the greatest comfort that we can have in our life as a Christian. That we are not in control, but God is in control.